Hey friends, welcome back. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
I pushed through the revolving glass door of the Ritz-Carlton, with the smell of disinfectant still stuck in my hair. My shift at the Veterans Rehabilitation Center had ended 20 minutes ago. I didn't have time to go home. I didn't have time to change. I had one reason for being here tonight. My parents said it would look bad if I didn't show up to my sister's fundraising gala. The lobby was all polished marble gold trim and people who never check price tags. A string quartet played something expensive. Everyone smelled like money and certainty. I stood there in my plain black pants, flat shoes, and a worn jacket folded over my arm. Inside that jacket pocket was a phone full of unanswered messages from vets who couldn't sleep tonight. I should have been home returning those calls. Instead, I was here in enemy territory because family obligation is a powerful drug. I spotted Brooke immediately. You couldn't miss her. Designer gown, diamond earrings, smile calibrated for cameras. She was surrounded by politicians and donors, holding court like she already owned the state. Brooke saw me. Her smile widened. Not in a happy way. In a predator way. She waved me over with two fingers like she was summoning a server. I walked toward the circle. Conversation softened. Eyes turned. People scanned me the way security scans unattended luggage. Brooke lifted her champagne glass and said loudly, "Everyone, this is my little sister Evelyn." Her tone made little sound like unfortunate. She wrapped an arm around me for display. Her perfume hit like a chemical weapon. Brooke continued, "She works in... what is it again, Ev?" She tilted her head. "Oh yes, she cleans up broken veterans at a rehab center." A few polite chuckles. She added, "Basically a social worker who deals with other people's failures." This time, the laughter was real. Comfortable, easy. People love laughing when they think they're safe. I looked at the faces around me, a senator, a hospital board member, a woman wearing a necklace that could pay 3 nurses' salaries. None of them looked embarrassed. They looked relieved that the joke wasn't about them. Brooke leaned closer to me and whispered, "Smile." Donors like humility stories. I didn't smile. I just stood there, still, quiet. The way you stand when you've been trained not to flinch under pressure. Someone asked Brooke about her nonprofit. She straightened and launched into her practice speech about compassion, healthcare access, and dignity. She said those words like they were personal inventions. I knew the script. I'd heard her rehearse it in front of the mirror when we were teenagers. Back then it was for class president. Now it was for millions of dollars. While she spoke, a waiter passed with a tray of red wine. Brooke grabbed a glass without looking and turned back toward me. She lifted it slightly. "Honestly, Evelyn, I admire you," she said loudly. "Not everyone can handle the smell of defeat all day." Another wave of laughter. I felt my jaw tighten. Not anger. Control. The kind that keeps you alive when everything around you goes sideways. Brooke's hand moved. Casual, almost lazy. The wine tipped. A smooth red line poured onto the jacket in my arms. The old military jacket I always carried with me. A piece of my past. A piece of someone else's blood, sweat, and fear. Red spread across the fabric. Brooke gasped theatrically. "Oh no," she said, eyes sparkling. "I'm so sorry, but honestly, that thing already smelled like a battlefield." People laughed again, louder this time. Someone said, "Well played." Someone else said, "Classic Brooke." I looked down at the jacket. I didn't move. I didn't wipe it. I didn't hand it off. I just let the stains sit there bright and visible like a truth no one wanted to acknowledge. Then I lifted my eyes. Brooke was still smiling, waiting for me to crumble, to cry, to yell, to make a scene so she could be the graceful sister who forgave me in front of everyone. I gave her nothing, no words, no reaction, just a calm look, direct, focused. The look of someone who has been trained to assess threats without blinking. Her smile flickered for half a second. Most people missed it. I didn't. The senator cleared his throat. The conversation shifted. Brooke turned away, already bored now that she had extracted her entertainment. I stood there for another moment. Then I stepped out of the circle. No dramatic exit, no storming off, just a quiet turn and a walk toward the terrace doors. Cold night air hit my face as I stepped outside. The city glowed below. Cars moved. Lives continued. No one inside noticed I was gone. I leaned against the stone railing and looked down at the jacket again, wine dripping slowly onto the marble. In another life, I might have cried. Tonight, I just memorized the moment. Every sound, every laugh, every face that joined in, because there is a difference between humiliation and information. And tonight, I had collected plenty of information. I took out my phone, one new message from a veteran, "Can't sleep again. Sorry to bother you." I typed back, "You're never a bother. I'll call you soon." I slid the phone away and looked back through the glass doors. Brooke was posing for photos now. Head tilted, perfect smile, perfect life. For a second, I wondered how many people in that room had ever been laughed at for doing real work instead of glamorous work. So let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room where you knew more, cared more, and worked harder than anyone there, but still got treated like you were the lowest person in the building? I pushed off the railing and headed back inside. I still had to face my family, and I still had a jacket to carry. I walked past the ballroom doors, with the jacket still in my arms, wine dripping onto my shoes, and didn't bother looking back. The elevator ride down was silent except for soft music that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. A couple stepped in. They glanced at the red stain, then at me, then decided eye contact was dangerous. I let them enjoy their ride in peace. Outside the city, air smelled like rain and exhaust. I didn't call a ride. I needed the walk. My apartment was small, but it was mine. No chandeliers, no marble, no people laughing at other people's work. By the time I got home, the wine had soaked deep into the jacket. I hung it carefully over the back of a chair, not because I was sentimental, but because respect is a habit. Some people respect medals. I respected what that jacket represented. I kicked off my shoes, turned on the kitchen light, and poured a glass of tap water. No crystal, no garnish, just water that didn't judge me. My phone rang. Mom flashed on the screen. I answered. Patricia Vance didn't bother with greetings. What on earth was that tonight? I took a sip of water. Hello to you too. Don't play games, she snapped. Brooke said you embarrassed her. I waited. Silence is a useful tool. People fill it with truth. Harold's voice joined the call on speaker. Your sister worked for months on that event. Months. Do you have any idea how important these donors are? I was invited, I said. I showed up. You showed up looking like... Patricia stopped searching for a word polite enough for company but cruel enough for effect. Like you'd come straight from cleaning floors. I looked around my kitchen. Countertop, sink, chair, everything clean. Floors clean too, by the way. I came from work. Harold exhaled loudly. That's exactly the problem, Evelyn. You insist on staying in that line of work. My job is helping injured veterans learn to walk again. And Brooke is raising funds that will change the healthcare system in this state, Patricia said. Do you understand scale vision? I leaned against the counter. I understand. One of my patients stood up today for the first time in 8 months. Neither of them reacted. No praise, no interest, just an awkward pause before Patricia returned to the agenda. Your behavior tonight made Brooke look bad. I didn't say anything. You didn't smile. You didn't play along. People noticed. So that was the crime. Not screaming, not fighting, just refusing to perform humiliation as entertainment. Harold cleared his throat. We need to talk about the grant ceremony on Monday. I stayed quiet. Brooke will be signing the state funding agreement. $25 million, Evelyn. This is a historic moment for our family. Our family, I repeated. Interesting phrasing. You will not attend, Patricia said. Your presence will distract from Brooke's achievement. Because of my job. Because of your appearance, she corrected. And frankly, your attitude. I looked at the jacket. The wine stain had spread wider, darker. Permanent. Some things don't wash out. Harold continued softer now, like he was doing me a favor. Brooke is our investment. She has the degree, the contacts, the future. You chose the military, then this government clinic job. That was your choice. I let out a small breath. Not a sigh, more like acknowledgement. You're right, I said. It was my choice. And choices have consequences, Patricia replied. We cannot risk the governor reconsidering because he thinks our family is unstable. There it was, not concern, not love, risk management. Anything else, I asked? Harold hesitated. We want you to stay away from Brooke for a while. She's under a lot of pressure. You understand? I did understand. Brooke was under pressure to maintain an image, to keep donors impressed, to stay on top. And I was a loose thread in the fabric. Okay, I said. That single word seemed to confuse them. They expected an argument. Tears, pleading, something they could classify as weakness. Instead, they got agreement. Patricia softened slightly, sensing victory. Good, that's best for everyone. Good night, Mom. Good night, Dad. I ended the call before they could add conditions. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, listening to the refrigerator hum. A boring, reliable sound. No orchestras, no applause, no laughter. I went to the bathroom and turned on the light. The mirror showed a woman in her 30s with tired eyes and hair pulled back in a practical knot. No makeup, no jewelry, no performance. I unbuttoned my shirt and turned slightly to the side. The scar ran along my shoulder. Pale, thick, uneven. A souvenir from a roadside explosion in a place most people only see on the news. I touched it once, lightly, not with sadness, with recognition. That scar had earned me nothing in my parents' eyes. No pride, no admiration, no place in family stories. It was just an inconvenient reminder that one daughter chose service instead of status. I put my shirt back on and walked to the living room. The apartment was quiet. I liked it that way. I sat on the couch and checked my messages from the rehab center. 2 more veterans needed callbacks. One needed paperwork for a prosthetics upgrade. Another needed help with housing. Real problems. Real people. No galas required. I typed replies, made notes, set reminders. Work I was good at. Work that mattered. Work that didn't get you applauded at fancy hotels. My phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. Ev, it's Brooke. Can we talk tomorrow? Family stuff. No apology, no acknowledgement, just family stuff. I stared at the screen. Brooke never contacted me directly unless she needed something. Even when we were kids, she only knocked on my door when she wanted homework answers or cover stories. I didn't reply. Instead, I placed the phone face down on the coffee table and leaned back, listening to the steady rhythm of a life that didn't require pretending. Some people chase rooms full of laughter. Some people learn what that laughter is really worth. I left the phone face down on the table and didn't touch it again that night. Morning came early. It always did when your job involved people who woke up screaming from dreams they couldn't control. I showered, dressed, and made coffee that tasted like responsibility. By the time I left for work, Brooke's message was still unanswered. At the rehab center, life was simple. A man learning to balance on new legs. A woman relearning how to hold a fork. A group session where no one laughed at anyone else's pain because everyone had their own. By noon, my phone buzzed again. Evelyn, please, I need you today. It's about Grandma's house. That got my attention. Grandma's house was the only place in my childhood where I could breathe. A small wooden home with creaky stairs, mismatched furniture, and the smell of baked bread. When she died, she left it to both Brooke and me. Brooke never visited after the funeral. I visited every month. I replied with one word, when Brooke answered instantly. Tonight, your place. I'll come by 7. I'll bring documents so we can settle things like adults. Like adults. That was new. At 6:58 p.m., someone knocked on my door. Brooke stood there in a cream-colored coat, heels, and a smile polished for negotiations. She held a leather folder in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other, as if this were a friendly catch-up and not a business meeting she scheduled without asking. I brought your favorite, she said, lifting the wine. You don't know my favorite, I said. She laughed lightly and walked in anyway. She looked around my apartment, clean, simple, functional. Her eyes scanned the room the way real estate investors scan potential flips. Wow, she said. Very minimalist. It's just small. She sat on the couch without being invited and crossed her legs. I remained standing. Brooke opened the leather folder and spread out documents on my coffee table like a dealer laying cards. Grandma's estate, she said. I've taken care of everything, taxes, maintenance, legal stuff. All you need to do is sign. I picked up the top page. The words were neat, official, and dangerous. Power of attorney, property management authorization, temporary financial trustee, temporary. A word people use when they want something permanent. You want me to sign over control of Grandma's house, I said. Brooke smiled. Not control, just management. I'm better equipped to handle assets. You're busy saving the world one veteran at a time. I flipped to the next page. Mortgage documents, loan agreements. My name was listed as co-owner. Her name as primary borrower. I looked up. You already used the house as collateral. Brooke's smile tightened for half a second. Of course, the house was just sitting there, dead equity. I made it work. For what? She leaned back and waved a hand. Lifestyle expenses, startup costs, You know how expensive it is to build something meaningful. I stared at the papers. Numbers, interest rates, payment schedules. A ticking clock printed in legal language. If I sign this, I said, I lose the house. If you sign, Brooke corrected. We secure the future, our family future. I set the documents down. You already risked it without asking me. Brooke sighed as if I were the unreasonable one. Ev, don't be dramatic. You never use the house. You just visit. Sentimental trips. It was Grandma's. Yes, Brooke said, smiling again. And now it's ours, which means we use it efficiently. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself water, and took a slow sip. When I returned, Brooke had opened the wine and poured herself a glass. You should relax, she said. This is a good thing. I'm doing this for all of us. I looked at her. Really looked. The expensive coat, the confident posture, the smooth voice. I said, You're in debt. Her eyes flashed. Excuse me, the loan, the interest, the timing. You're desperate for liquidity before the grant ceremony. Brooke set her glass down carefully. You're overthinking. Sign the papers. I picked up a photo frame from the shelf behind her. A picture of me in uniform, standing with my old unit. Dusty boots. Smiles that came after surviving something real. Brooke glanced at it with mild disgust. Why do you keep that junk displayed? Because these people saved my life. She stood abruptly and grabbed the frame. Do you know how embarrassing it is, she said, voice rising, to have a sister who plays soldier and wipes broken men's backsides for a living? She threw the frame to the floor. Glass shattered. The photo slid out. One corner bent. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. Brooke stepped closer. You're a crippled government worker with no ambition. I am building an empire. With or without you. She leaned in, eyes sharp. Once I get that $25 million, I won't need any of you. I'll put Mom and Dad in the cheapest retirement home I can find and move to Europe. Finally free. Her words hung in the air, ugly and proud. I looked at the broken frame, the bent photo, the scattered glass. Then I looked at the documents again. And I said calmly, Get out. Brooke blinked. What? Take your papers, take your wine, and leave. She stared at me like I had just spoken a foreign language. Then she laughed, once short and cruel. You think you can stop me, she said. You're nothing, a low-level civil servant. A charity case in boots. She grabbed her folder, shoved the papers back inside, and marched to the door. At the threshold, she turned. Enjoy your tiny life, Evelyn, she said. Because in a few days, I'll own everything that ever mattered in this family. The door closed behind her. The apartment was quiet again. I bent down, picked up the photograph from the floor, and brushed the glass shards away. The corner was creased. The faces were still clear. I placed the photo back on the shelf. Then I pulled out my phone and opened my contacts. I scrolled until I found a name I hadn't called in years. Marcus Hale, former logistics officer, current financial investigations specialist. I pressed call. The phone rang twice before Marcus answered. Evelyn Vance, he said. Didn't think I'd hear from you unless the world was ending. Not ending, I said. Just getting dishonest. He chuckled once. Tell me everything. Marcus had been our logistics officer, the kind of person who could track fuel shipments across 3 countries and tell you who stole a sandwich 6 months ago. After leaving the service, he'd gone into financial investigations. Same skills, different battlefield. I told him about the gala, the documents, the mortgage, the grant, Brooke's nonprofit. I left out the emotional commentary. Marcus didn't need drama, he needed data. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. You want me to look into your sister, he said. I want to know if public money is about to disappear. That's a yes, he said. Send me what you have. I took photos of every page Brooke had left behind in her folder by accident. She was always in a hurry, always confident no one else paid attention. I sent them. Marcus texted back. Give me 48 hours. I'll give you coffee if you do it in 24, he replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Then he remembered who he was talking to and sent another message, kidding. No emojis. Habit from my kids. I ignored that. At work the next day, I did my job. Intake interviews, paperwork, therapy schedules, progress reports. My face didn't change. My voice didn't change. No one knew I had quietly declared war on my sister's empire. That night, Marcus called. You were right, he said. About what? Everything. He emailed a folder while we stayed on the line. I opened it on my laptop. Spreadsheets, bank statements, loan records, nonprofit filings, color-coded charts. Center for Dignity, Marcus said. Your sister's nonprofit. On paper, it provides medical outreach to underserved communities. In reality, I asked. In reality, 80% of donations go to administrative costs, luxury office rent, executive car leases, event planning, travel. Guess who the executive team is? Brooke and her husband, and two of their friends who don't show up to work but get paid anyway, Marcus said. Classic funnel, donations in, lifestyle out. I scrolled further. What about the grant? The grant application is clean on the surface, he said. But the supporting medical certification's forged. I sat back in my chair. Marcus continued. The state requires proof of clinical capacity. They submitted letters from hospitals that don't exist. License numbers that belong to retired doctors. One signature copied from a publicly available document. Can you prove it? I already verified with the medical board, he said. Those licenses are inactive. Those doctors have never heard of your sister. I looked at the next file. And this, I asked. Marcus sighed. Your sister's husband. Julian, crypto losses, gambling debts, private lenders. He owes 7 figures to people who don't send polite reminders. I closed my eyes for a moment, not because I was shocked, because everything suddenly made sense. The gala, the urgency, the grant, the house collateral, the fake kindness. Brooke wasn't building an empire. She was building a lifeboat. Marcus spoke again. There's more. I pulled call logs from one of Julian's associates. Recorded conversation. Your sister bragging about dumping your parents in a cheap retirement facility once the money hits. He sent the audio file. I pressed play. Brooke's voice filled my living room, laughing, relaxed, honest in a way she never was in front of family. They'll be fine, she said in the recording. 3 meals a day, TV, whatever. I'm not wasting prime European years babysitting them. Another voice laughed. Cold. Efficient, Brooke replied. I learned from the best. I stopped the audio. Marcus didn't speak. He knew better than to ask how I felt. I said, Can this stand in court easily? He replied. Forgery, fraud, intent to misuse public funds. It's enough to freeze the grant before it's awarded. How fast, if the right person sees it immediately, Marcus said. I stared at the screen, evidence neatly stacked. Lines connecting, patterns revealed. In the military, we had a saying, don't pull the trigger unless you're sure. I said, send me a clean report. No commentary, just facts and verification sources. You got it, Marcus said. But Evelyn, once you use this, there's no going back with your family. My family already made their choice, I said. The next morning, I walked into the State Health Administration building where I worked. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, coffee that tasted like cardboard. Nobody looked twice at me. I was just another government employee with a badge and a lanyard. I sat at my desk and opened Marcus's final report. Every line was documented, every claim sourced, every forged signature cross-referenced. I forwarded the file to a secure email address I knew well, Office of the Economic Crimes Unit. Then I deleted the sent copy from my inbox. At lunch, I ate a sandwich at my desk and filled out housing forms for a veteran who needed emergency placement. At 4:57 p.m., an unfamiliar number called. This is Agent Ruiz, a voice said. Ms. Vance, we received your report. We'll be in touch. That's fine, I said. I hung up and looked at the time. 4:58 p.m. I packed my bag and left the office. Outside, the air was warm. The street was busy. People rushed home to dinners, arguments, laughter, television, silence. I walked to the bus stop and stood among strangers who didn't know my sister was about to lose everything she thought she owned. No grand plan, no dramatic vow, no speech to the sky. Just a quiet woman waiting for a bus, and a system already in motion. I stepped off the bus and walked the last 2 blocks home, hands in my jacket pockets, pace steady, mind clear. By the time I unlocked my apartment door, I already knew I wouldn't be sleeping much. Not from anxiety, from timing. Things were moving, systems were aligning. People who didn't know each other were now working toward the same target. I set my bag down and opened my laptop. 3 new emails from Marcus. No greeting, just subject lines. Creditors. Julian, family. I opened the first. Photos, surveillance stills, screenshots of text messages. A man in a black suit waiting in the lobby of Brooke's office building. Another man sitting in a car across the street. A third standing near the back entrance with a phone to his ear. Marcus had labeled them simply private lenders. I scrolled. These aren't banks, his note said. These are people who collect in person. I leaned back in my chair. Brooke always thought danger came in the form of bad press or awkward dinner conversations. She had never dealt with people who don't send reminder emails. I opened the second email. Julian, my brother-in-law, always charming, always laughing, always slightly too confident. Marcus had pulled trading histories, crypto exchanges, leverage accounts, margin calls. A single line in Marcus's summary stood out. All emergency funds exhausted. Current debt exposure exceeds liquid assets by 312%. In normal language, Julian had set their house on fire and hoped the grant money would put it out before the neighbors noticed. I opened the third email. It contained an audio file. I clicked play. Brooke's voice again, this time sharp, tense, controlled anger. Mom. I told you it's just a temporary loan, she said. Yes, I know the house is already mortgaged. That's why this is urgent. Patricia's voice came through the phone speaker. Nervous, trusting. But Brooke, your father and I are retired. We can't keep borrowing. You won't have to, Brooke said. Monday, the grant is approved. Monday, everything is paid off. You'll get your house back. With interest. Harold's voice joined. Are you sure this is safe? A pause. Then Brooke, softer, persuasive. Dad. I'm about to bring $25 million into this family's name. Do you want the governor shaking my hand while you live in a small house that doesn't match our status? Silence. Then Harold again. We'll sign. The recording ended. I sat still for a long moment. Not angry, not surprised, just watching the pieces fit perfectly into place. Brooke wasn't just using Grandma's house. She was using my parents' fear of being ordinary. Their need to be seen as successful. Their terror of slipping down the ladder they worshipped. I closed the laptop and made tea. Chamomile. Simple. Practical. While the water boiled, my phone buzzed with a new text. Unknown number, Ms. Vance. This is Agent Ruiz again. We've scheduled a presence at the grant meeting. Please confirm the applicant will appear in person. I typed yes. Dr. Brooke Vance will be there. Then I deleted the thread. The kettle clicked off. I poured the tea and took a slow sip. At 9:14 p.m., Brooke called. I didn't answer. She called again. I let it ring out. A third call came in, then a text. Brooke, Ev, pick up. It's important. I placed the phone face down and kept drinking my tea. Across town, Brooke was likely pacing a luxury office floor. Creditors waiting downstairs. Her husband refreshing exchange charts, my parents signing papers they didn't understand. And she still believed Monday would save her. I finished the tea, washed the mug, and set it neatly on the drawing rack. Then I opened a secure folder on my laptop. Marcus's report, the forged certifications, the nonprofit audit, the lender tracking, the call recordings. Everything was ready, not to attack, not to punish, to stop public money from being stolen and vulnerable people from being used as decorations in a fundraising brochure. I shut the laptop. Tomorrow was a normal workday. I would review clinic budgets, attend a planning meeting, approve supply orders, do my job. And somewhere in the same government building, a conference room was being prepared for a celebration. A banner printed, a podium placed, a pen set out for signing. Brooke believed she was days away from victory. I turned off the lights and lay down on the couch. Somewhere deep inside the city, a machine was already changing direction. No explosions, no shouting, no dramatic countdown. Just quiet systems doing exactly what they were designed to do when the right evidence appears in the right hands. I closed my eyes and let the night run its course. I woke before my alarm. No rush, no nerves, just habit. I dressed in a dark suit I rarely wore. Practical, clean, nothing flashy. I pinned a small service medal to my lapel. Not for sentiment, for identification. People listen differently when they know you've survived something real. I left the apartment, locked the door, and took the bus like I always did. No limo, no driver, no photographer. The state administration building stood exactly where it always had. Beige stone, glass doors, security desk. The kind of place people ignore until it quietly decides the fate of millions. I swiped my badge and walked in. Morning, Evelyn, the guard said. Morning. No one looked at me twice. That was the advantage. When people underestimate you, you move freely. I reached the elevator. As the doors slid shut, my reflection stared back. Same woman who had been laughed at in a ballroom. Same woman who had been called a mistake by her parents. Same woman Brooke thought was a background character in her story. The elevator opened on the executive floor. My new office was waiting. I stepped inside. Desk, chair, state seal on the wall, a stack of files neatly arranged, a nameplate that read, Senior Program Officer Evelyn Vance. I didn't smile. I didn't pause for dramatic effect. I simply sat down and turned on my computer. The promotion had been quiet. Based on years of logistics coordination, crisis management, and budget restructuring. My supervisors valued results, not glamour. My family had never asked what my job actually involved. They assumed government clinic meant low-level paperwork. They never noticed when I moved up. That was fine. I didn't need applause. I needed access. A knock on the door. "Come in," I said. My assistant stepped in. A young man named Carter, efficient, curious, smart enough not to ask unnecessary questions. "Morning, Ms. Vance. Conference room B is ready. The governor's staff will arrive in 40 minutes. "Thank you, Carter." He hesitated. "We have visitors scheduled. Dr. Brooke Vance and delegation. They asked to meet the final signing authority directly." I looked at my screen. Brooke's application file sat open, her nonprofit name displayed in bold letters. "Let them wait in the reception lounge," I said, and informed security to allow Economic Crimes Unit access through the east entrance. Carter didn't ask why. He simply nodded. "Yes, ma'am." When he left, I opened the report Marcus compiled. Every forged document, every fake certification, every misused donation, every recorded conversation, all verified, all time-stamped. I forwarded the full file to one more address. Governor's Chief of Staff, subject line Urgent Compliance Review, Center for Dignity, Grant Application. No emotional language, no accusations, just facts and attachments. 3 minutes later, a reply arrived. Received. Reviewing immediately. I closed the email. At 9:02 a.m., my phone vibrated once. A text from Brooke. "Brooke, big day. Wish me luck. Maybe you'll finally be proud of me." I deleted the message without replying. At 9:18 a.m., Carter returned. "They've arrived," he said. "Dr. Vance, her parents, and 2 associates. They're requesting immediate access." "Let them in at 9:30, I said. "Not earlier." "Yes, ma'am." I stood and adjusted my jacket, smoothed the lapel, checked the metal was straight, not out of vanity, out of habit. Uniforms matter, they signal readiness. At 9:27 a.m., my office phone rang. Ms. Vance, a calm voice said, "Agent Ruiz, we're in position." "Understood," I replied. At 9:30 a.m. exactly, Carter opened my door. "Dr. Brooke Vance and party," he announced. I didn't turn immediately. I kept my eyes on the monitor, letting them step in, letting them take in the office, letting them feel in control. I heard heels, confident, fast, the sound of someone who believes the world is already hers. Brooke's voice filled the room before she saw me. Finally, she said, "I've been waiting for." I turned my chair. Brooke froze mid-sentence. Harold stopped walking. Patricia inhaled sharply. One of Brooke's associates blinked twice as if the room had suddenly changed shape. Brooke's grip tightened on her presentation folder. She forced a smile, a thin one. "Oh," she said, "Evelyn." I looked at her calmly. No triumph, no anger, just acknowledgement. "Dr. Vance," I said, "welcome." Her eyes flicked to the nameplate on my desk, then to my badge, then to the state seal on the wall. For the first time in her life, Brooke didn't have a prepared line ready. She recovered quickly. She always did. "This is unexpected," she said, laughing lightly. "I didn't realize you worked here." "You never asked," I replied. Harold cleared his throat. "Ev, what exactly do you do here?" "I oversee program compliance and funding authorization for state healthcare initiatives," I said, "including today's grant review." Patricia's voice trembled slightly. "You're the one who signs." "I am one of the final signatories," I said. "Yes." Brooke's smile tightened again, but she stepped forward anyway, raising her folder like a shield. "Perfect," she said. "Then we're in the right place. I'm ready to present." I gestured to the chairs. "Please, sit." They sat. Brooke opened her folder, arranging her papers neatly. She straightened her shoulders, regained her stage voice, her donor voice. She began speaking about compassion, about dignity, about medical access, about underserved communities. And while she talked, I opened Marcus's audit file on the large monitor behind my desk. The screen lit the room in soft blue. No one noticed yet. Brooke was still talking, still performing, still convinced the room belonged to her. I waited, patiently. The way I had learned to wait in places where one wrong move got people killed. The moment was approaching, and everyone was already exactly where they needed to be. Brooke kept talking while I watched her reflection faintly mirrored on my monitor screen. She spoke with practiced rhythm, hands moving just enough, voice warm, confident, rehearsed, the kind of performance that convinced donors they were witnessing purpose, not theater. Harold sat beside her, chest slightly puffed out. Patricia clasped her purse like it contained the family's last breath. Brooke clicked a remote. Her slideshow appeared on the smaller presentation screen, smiling stock photo patients, clean clinics, bright windows, hope carefully filtered through professional lighting. She said our Center for Dignity will redefine healthcare outreach in this state. She said, we will serve those forgotten by the system. She said, this grant is not an expense. It is an investment in humanity. She paused for effect. She always knew where to pause. Some people think real service happens in small rooms with small tasks, she continued, glancing at me. But true change happens on a larger scale. Vision matters. Her associates nodded on cue. Harold smiled proudly. Patricia's eyes shined like she was watching a coronation. Brooke clicked to the next slide. Budget breakdown, clean charts, neat percentages. She pointed to a bar graph. 80% of funding will go directly to patient support. I watched the number. 80%. Marcus's report had shown the real number, 17%. Brooke finished her presentation and closed her folder with a soft tap. She looked directly at me. And now I believe we're ready to sign. Silence followed. Not awkward, not confused, just waiting. I leaned back in my chair and folded my hands. Thank you, Dr. Vance, I said. I have a few clarifying questions. Brooke's smile returned. This was normal. This was expected. Of course, she said. I clicked my keyboard once. The large monitor behind me changed. Her slideshow disappeared. In its place, a spreadsheet labeled Center for Dignity, Financial Allocation Audit. Rows, columns, dollar amounts, real numbers. Brooke blinked. I clicked again. Another document appeared. Loan agreement, collateral, Vance family property, grandmother's residence. Another click. Medical board, license verification. Submitted certifications, invalid. Another click. Audio transcript. Recorded call, intent to misuse state funds. The room shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough that everyone felt it. Harold leaned forward. What is this, Patricia whispered Brooke. Brooke stayed still for a moment, then laughed lightly. Oh, she said. This must be some kind of internal draft. I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. I turned the monitor slightly so they could see better. This is a forensic financial investigation report, I said. Compiled by an independent specialist, all data verified through public boards, banking records, and recorded communications. Brooke's smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. Evelyn, she said quietly, we can talk about this as family. I shook my head once. This is not a family discussion, I said. This is a state compliance review. One of Brooke's associates shifted uncomfortably. The other opened his mouth, then closed it again. Harold's voice cracked. Sweetheart, what are you doing? I looked at him. Really looked. A man who invested in one daughter and wrote off the other. A man who thought success was a photograph in the newspaper. I'm doing my job, I said. Brooke's tone hardened. You think you can block this grant? She asked. Do you know who I've spoken to? Who supports me? I tapped a key. The next screen showed Economic Crimes Unit, active presence on site. Brooke's breath hitched, just slightly. At that moment, the door behind them opened. 2 agents stepped in. Suits, badges, calm expressions. Not dramatic, not threatening, just final. Agent Ruiz nodded to me once. Dr. Brooke Vance, he said, we need to ask you some questions regarding fraudulent documentation and attempted misappropriation of public funds. Patricia gasped. Harold stood up quickly. This is outrageous. This is some mistake. Ruiz didn't raise his voice. Sir, please remain seated. Brooke looked from the agents to me. Her voice dropped low. Evelyn, stop this. We can fix it. You and me, together. I met her eyes. You already fixed it, I said. You fixed it when you decided lying was easier than working. She stepped forward, anger breaking through control. You're just a bitter, low-level worker who never accomplished anything, she hissed. This was my future. I didn't flinch. I pressed one key on my keyboard. A large red button appeared on the monitor. Reject application. I looked at Brooke once, then I clicked. The system processed. A confirmation window appeared. Grant status permanently frozen, under fraud investigation. Carter, standing by the door, quietly saved the confirmation to the state records server. Efficient, invisible. Brooke stared at the screen. Harold sank back into his chair. Patricia covered her mouth. One of Brooke's associates slowly stood up and walked toward the door without saying a word. Survival instinct kicking in. Brooke whispered, "You can't do this." I turned my chair slightly toward her. I already did. Ruiz stepped closer. "Dr. Vance will need you to come with us." Brooke didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on mine. The sister who laughed at my job. The sister who poured wine on my jacket. The sister who tried to sell our grandmother's house. The sister who thought service meant weakness. She didn't speak again. The agents guided her toward the door. Harold tried to follow. Ruiz raised a hand gently. "Sir, we'll speak with you shortly." Patricia stood frozen, unsure which reality to believe. Brooke was halfway through the doorway when she turned her head one last time. Her voice was quiet now, stripped of performance. "This isn't over." I didn't answer. The door closed behind her. The office returned to its normal hum. Computer fan, air conditioning, distant footsteps in the hallway. I turned back to my desk and opened the next file in my queue. A clinic supply request for prosthetic equipment. Real work waited. And I had a schedule to keep. The door closed. The agents were gone. Brooke was gone. The room smelled faintly of expensive perfume and panic. Harold stood slowly, as if gravity had changed. Patricia remained seated, fingers gripping her purse so tightly, her knuckles had turned white. Carter stepped forward. "Ms. Vance, should I escort them out?" I looked up. "Give them a moment." Carter nodded and left quietly. Harold turned to me. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "Evelyn, what have you done?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften it either. "I stopped a fraudulent grant from stealing public money," I said. "That's your sister," Patricia whispered. "Your own blood." I met her eyes. Blood didn't stop her from trying to take Grandma's house, or from planning to dump you in a discount nursing facility. Patricia flinched. Harold looked away. "That recording," Harold said. It wasn't real. It had to be edited." I tapped my keyboard. The audio file opened again. I hit play. Brooke's voice filled the room. Clear, unedited, casual cruelty. Harold closed his eyes. Patricia's breath shook. I stopped the audio. No lecture, no accusation, just silence. Facts do their own talking. Harold sat back down, slowly, carefully, like a man discovering his legs no longer worked the way he expected. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked quietly. "You didn't ask," I said. "You told me to stay away because I made Brooke look bad." Patricia's eyes filled. "We were trying to protect the family." I nodded once. "I did protect the family, just not the version you wanted." Neither of them spoke after that. I turned back to my computer and resumed reviewing the prosthetic equipment request. It needed approval before end of day, or a veteran would wait another week to walk again. Priorities were simple. A knock on the door. Carter returned. "Ms. Vance, Agent Ruiz requests a moment. Send him in." Ruiz stepped inside. "Dr. Vance is being processed. Charges will include financial fraud, forgery, and attempted misappropriation of state funds. We'll also be speaking to Mr. Julian Crane." I nodded. "Thank you." "One more thing," Ruiz added. "We'll need documentation regarding the collateral property, the grandmother's residence." "I'll send it," I said. Ruiz left. Harold looked up sharply. "The house. Brooke said it was just paperwork, that it would be returned once the grant." "There is no grant," I said. "And the loan default process has already begun. But the state fraud injunction freezes all associated assets." Patricia blinked. "So, the house will not be taken by private lenders," I finished. "It's protected now under investigation hold." Harold exhaled shakily. "You saved it. I prevented a crime," I said. "The outcome is a byproduct." Patricia wiped her eyes. "Evelyn, we didn't know you had this kind of authority. You never asked what I did," I said. "You just decided Brooke was the investment and I was the mistake." That landed. Not dramatically, just truthfully. Harold stood again. His voice was rough. "We need to see Brooke. You'll be contacted by investigators," I said. "Until then, you should go home." They hesitated. Then Harold nodded once. Patricia stood slowly. At the door, Patricia turned back. "Evelyn, what happens now?" I looked at my screen. The prosthetic request still needed approval. I clicked approve. Now I said the system works the way it's supposed to. They left without another word. The office returned to its quiet hum. I checked my calendar. 3 meetings, 2 budget reviews, 1 call with the clinic director. Normal day. At noon, I ate a sandwich at my desk. At 1:17 p.m., a news alert appeared on my phone. Local business leader under investigation for state fund fraud. No names yet. Just sources confirm an arrest during a grant review meeting. At 1:42 p.m., another alert. Nonprofit Center for Dignity operations suspended. At 2:05 p.m. Private lenders seeking assets linked to defunct nonprofit. State freeze in place. The machine kept moving. Efficient, unemotional, fair. At 3:30 p.m., Marcus texted. Marcus heard the trap close clean. Nice work, officer, I replied. Me, thanks for the intel. Then I deleted the thread. At 4:45 p.m., I shut down my computer, collected my bag, and left the building. No reporters, no cameras, no applause, just a woman exiting a government building at the end of a workday. Outside the city moved on, people crossing streets, cars honking, a man selling hot dogs, a child dropping a toy and crying until a parent picked it up. Life continued. I walked to the bus stop and sat on the bench. A message arrived from an unknown number. This is Julian Crane's attorney. We need to discuss your involvement. I blocked the number. Another message arrived seconds later. Brooke, you think you won. You destroyed everything. I read it once, then deleted it. I leaned back against the bench and watched the bus approach. Nothing felt triumphant. Nothing felt tragic. Just balance returning to a scale that had leaned too far in one direction for too long. The bus doors opened. I stepped inside and sat near the window. Tomorrow veterans would need therapy. Clinics would need funding. Paperwork would need processing. And the state would continue running quietly in the background, as it always had, as it always should. The bus ride home was quiet. Not peaceful, just neutral. The kind of quiet that follows a storm nobody else on the street even noticed. I got off at my usual stop and walked the last block. Same cracked sidewalk, same corner store, same old man feeding pigeons despite the sign telling him not to. My phone buzzed as I reached my building. Unknown number again. I almost ignored it, then answered. Evelyn Harold's voice said, hoarse, unsteady, Dad. They took Brooke, he said, from the holding room. She's being transferred downtown, I know. She asked for a lawyer. Julian is gone. He emptied their joint account and disappeared. I let that settle. Julian running wasn't surprising. Men like him don't sink with ships. They swim away while the band is still playing. Harold swallowed. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. I'm not the right person to fix that, I said. There was silence on the line. Then Harold spoke again. Can we see you? I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside. Took off my shoes, put my bag down. You're standing in front of my building, aren't you? I asked. Another silence. Caught. Yes, he admitted. I walked to the window and looked down. Harold and Patricia stood on the sidewalk. Harold in yesterday's suit, Patricia clutching his arm like the ground might move. I opened the window. Come up, I said. 10 minutes later, they were inside my apartment. The small space that Brooke once called minimalist, like it was an insult. Patricia sat on the couch. Harold stayed standing, unsure where to put himself. Patricia looked around. Not judging this time, just seeing. I didn't know you lived like this, she said. It works, I replied. Harold cleared his throat. Ev, I owe you an apology. I didn't react. I let him continue. I told myself Brooke was the smart investment. The future. I told myself your path was a mistake because it scared me. I didn't understand it. I didn't try, his voice cracked. I'm sorry, Patricia reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't squeeze back either. You didn't just misunderstand, I said. You dismissed. You minimized. You told me my work was embarrassing. Patricia nodded slowly. We did. I looked at both of them. Two people who had built their identity around social ladders and appearances. Two people who had bet on the wrong horse and blamed the other one for not racing. Brooke made her choices, I said. I made mine. Today's outcome is just math. Harold sat down finally, like a man who had run out of speeches. The investigators said the grandmother's house will remain frozen until the case is resolved, he said. But they hinted, it may be released to you because you didn't participate, I nodded. That's likely. Patricia's eyes widened. You'll get the house if the court approves. Harold looked relieved, then ashamed, both at once. You always loved that place, Patricia whispered. Yes, I said, I did. No nostalgia, no trembling voice, just fact. Patricia took a breath. Evelyn, when this is over, can we start again? There it was, the familiar request, the one people make when they realize the world they built just collapsed. I didn't answer immediately. I won't cut you off, I said finally. But I won't pretend nothing happened either. If we move forward, it will be honest. No pretending, no ranking children, no image games. Harold nodded. That's fair. They stayed a little longer. Drank tap water, sat in simple chairs, no performances, no roles to play. Just 3 adults in a small apartment facing what remained after illusions burned off. When they left, it was already dark. I closed the door and leaned against it for a moment. Not from exhaustion, from acknowledgement. Some battles end loudly, some end in living rooms with plain furniture and quiet conversations. A week later, the court released the house. No ceremony, just paperwork, my name on a deed. A key handed over at a county office window by a woman. Chewing gum and reading a romance novel. I drove there the same afternoon. The wooden house stood exactly as I remembered. Crooked porch, chipped paint, wind chimes that didn't match. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Dust, old curtains, sunlight through lace. I walked from room to room, not sentimental, just present. Then I pulled out my phone and made one call. Veterans Outreach Department, a voice answered. This is Evelyn Vance, I said. I'd like to register a private property for use as a small transitional support center for former service members. I have a house. I need guidance. The woman on the line sounded surprised, then interested. Within weeks, the house changed. New beds, clean sheets, therapy chairs, a small kitchen stocked with real food, a bulletin board for job postings. A back room turned into a quiet space for those who needed silence more than conversation. No donors, no galas, no champagne. Just work done by people who didn't need to post it online. On opening day, the first veteran stepped through the door with a duffel bag and tired eyes. Is this the place, he asked? Yes, I said. Welcome home. He nodded once. That was enough. In another part of the city, Brooke waited in a holding facility for trial. Julian stayed missing. Creditors circled whatever scraps were left. The Center for Dignity website now displayed a single-line operation suspended by court order. Life had a way of redistributing illusions. That evening, I stood on the porch of Grandma's house, watching the sun sink behind the trees. No victory pose, no soundtrack. Just quiet air and a place doing what it was always meant to do. Be useful, be real, be honest. And before you go, I'll ask you something worth thinking about. If you discovered the person who laughed at your small life was secretly building theirs on lies, would you protect the truth even if it meant breaking your own family's illusion? Or would you stay silent to keep the peace? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories, where quiet strength rewrites the ending. I was wiping down the kitchen counter at the center when it hit me. Not the smell of disinfectant, not the hum of the refrigerator, not the sound of one of the guys in the living room laughing at a terrible TV game show. It was the memory of Brooke's laugh in that ballroom. Not just her laugh. The crowd's laugh. The comfortable, effortless laugh of people who knew exactly who was allowed to be on stage and who was supposed to be a joke. For a long time, I thought that night hurt because I was humiliated. But standing in a house that now sheltered people who had slept under bridges and still showed up to rebuild their lives, I realized something important. That night didn't break me, it informed me. Humiliation is usually treated like a wound, something to heal, something to get over. But sometimes humiliation is data. Raw, uncomfortable, undeniable data about the environment you're in. In that ballroom, I learned 3 things in under 5 minutes. I learned who in my family valued image over integrity. I learned which strangers would laugh at cruelty if it meant staying inside the circle. And I learned that my place in that world was never going to be earned through effort, sacrifice, or service. It would only be earned if I became someone else entirely. That realization was painful, but it was precise. In the military, we were taught that emotions can be signals, not commands. Signals, information, something to interpret before acting. That night, I didn't explode. I didn't run. I didn't beg for respect. I observed. Who initiated the cruelty? Who enabled it? Who stayed silent? Who enjoyed it? Who looked away? That map became more valuable than any argument I could have started. Most people respond to humiliation in one of two ways. They collapse inward, or they lash outward. Both give control to the person who hurt them. I did something different. I collected the moment. I replayed it later like security footage, frame by frame, not to torture myself, to understand the structure I was standing in. And once you understand a structure, you can decide whether to leave it, change it, or quietly reroute power inside it. Here's the truth most people don't tell you. People who humiliate others in public are rarely powerful. They are terrified of losing power. They laugh first so no one laughs at them. They mock others to signal where the hierarchy sits. They perform confidence to cover instability. And the crowd laughs along because social survival is wired deep in us. Nobody wants to be the next target. Once you see that clearly, humiliation stops being a personal verdict. It becomes a behavioral pattern. That shift changes everything. If you're listening to this and you've ever been the one standing quietly while others laughed at you, here's something worth considering. The moment you didn't fight back might not have been weakness. It might have been the moment you started gathering intelligence. Silence is not always surrender. Sometimes it's reconnaissance. Now, I'm not saying you should accept disrespect forever. Boundaries matter, action matters, justice matters, but timing matters more. React too early and you play the role assigned to you. React too late and you lose yourself. React at the right moment and the structure shifts under your feet. So let's get practical. If you ever find yourself in a room where you're being underestimated or subtly mocked, ask yourself 3 questions. First, is this about me or about their need to feel superior? Second, who is benefiting from me staying in the lower position? Third, if I respond right now, am I solving the problem or just giving them entertainment? Those questions slow the emotional surge. They give you back control of the situation. Here are 2 signs you're being used as a power demonstration, not just teased. 1. The joke isn't clever, it's status-based. It targets your job, background, appearance, or role. 2. Others laugh quickly, even if it's uncomfortable laughter. That means the hierarchy is being reinforced, not humor shared. When you see those signs, you have choices. You can walk away. You can stay silent and gather information. Or you can respond later from a position of leverage instead of impulse. Most people are taught to defend their dignity in the moment. But real leverage rarely lives in the moment. It lives in preparation. Brooke laughed at me in a ballroom. Later, she discovered I had access to the only signature that mattered. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because I didn't waste energy proving myself to people who had already decided who I was. I let them keep their story about me, and quietly built a different reality underneath it. Another thing I learned. Not every room deserves your emotional investment. If a room can't recognize the value of service integrity or competence, unless it comes in designer clothing, that room is informationally bankrupt. You don't need to win respect there. You need to understand it long enough to decide your next move. Some of you listening might be in workplaces where your contributions are ignored, families where your sacrifices are minimized, social circles where your seriousness is treated like a punchline. If that's you, don't rush to change yourself to fit their laughter. Pause, observe, ask. What kind of people laugh at dedication? What kind of system rewards performance over substance? And do I actually want to belong there? Because sometimes the biggest power move isn't proving you belong. It's realizing you were never meant to. The house I'm standing in now is full of people rebuilding their lives. No applause, no champagne, no curated smiles. Just steady effort and real progress. No one here laughs at service, and that tells me everything I need to know about which world was worth investing in. Humiliation taught me where I didn't belong. Patience taught me where I did. And quiet preparation turned laughter into leverage. Now I'll leave you with a question worth sitting with. If the people laughing at you today have no idea what you're quietly building underneath the surface, who will really be laughing when the structure shifts? I was standing in the hallway of the center when I heard one of the residents on the phone with his brother. "I love you," he said, "but I can't come back to that house. Not if I want to stay sober." His voice was calm. No anger, no drama, just a boundary. I walked past him without interrupting, but the sentence stayed with me. Because for most of my life, I had been taught a different rule. Family is everything. Blood is thicker than water. You forgive no matter what. It sounds noble. It sounds loyal. It sounds like something good families say to each other over warm dinners. But in reality, that rule is often used to protect dysfunction, not love. I learned that the hard way. When Brooke tried to take Grandma's house, when my parents defended her, when they told me my presence embarrassed them, none of that felt like family. It felt like a corporation protecting its brand. And when everything collapsed, when the truth finally showed itself, my parents stood in my small apartment and asked to start again. In that moment, I understood something most people avoid. You don't get to choose your blood, but you do get to choose your loyalty. Blood is biology, loyalty is behavior. And confusing the two keeps a lot of people trapped in cycles they don't deserve. I didn't cut my parents off. I didn't slam doors. I didn't declare dramatic ultimatums. I did something quieter. I redefined the rules. I told them, we move forward only if we tell the truth. No pretending, no golden child, no invisible child, no image management. That wasn't punishment. That was a boundary. Here's what most people get wrong about boundaries. They think boundaries are walls. They're not. Boundaries are doors with clear conditions. You're welcome to come in, but not with the old behavior, not with the old hierarchy, not with the old manipulation. That distinction changes everything. A lot of you listening know exactly what I'm talking about. A parent who only respects you when you succeed. A sibling who borrows, takes, manipulates, then disappears. A family that wants your presence but not your truth. In those situations, staying loyal often means betraying yourself. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Some families don't want closeness. They want compliance. They don't want honesty. They want harmony at any cost. They don't want relationship. They want roles. The obedient child, the successful child, the problem child, the invisible child. Once those roles are assigned, anyone who tries to change them becomes a threat. That was me, not because I was cruel, not because I was unloving, but because I refused to play the part they wrote for me. If you're in a situation like that, here are 3 principles that helped me keep my footing. First principle, forgiveness is internal. Reconciliation is conditional. You can let go of resentment inside yourself. That doesn't mean you must return to the same harmful structure. You can forgive a parent and still say, we don't discuss my career like that anymore. Or you don't get to insult my choices in my home. Forgiveness heals you. Boundaries protect you. Second principle. Love without accountability is just permission. If you keep showing up where you are disrespected, you're not practicing loyalty. You're teaching others how to treat you. Accountability sounds like I want a relationship with you, but not under those conditions. Not cruel, not loud, just clear. Third principle. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because you share DNA. That sentence makes people uncomfortable. Good. It should. Because too many adults carry childhood obligations into situations that are no longer safe, fair, or respectful. You didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose your siblings. But you do choose what behavior you allow around you now. When my parents stood in my apartment, they were scared. Not just for Brooke, for themselves. Their identity had cracked. They wanted comfort. A return to normal. I offered them something better than normal. I offered honesty. No ranking daughters, no pretending, no worship of appearances. If they could live with that, we could have a relationship. If they couldn't, we wouldn't. That was the first adult conversation we'd ever had as equals. Here's something else I learned. Cutting people off isn't always strength. Letting them in without conditions isn't love. Real maturity is being able to say, I care about you, I forgive you, and these are my boundaries. No yelling, no revenge, no performance, just truth. For anyone listening who feels torn between family obligation and self-respect, I'll give you a simple tool. Before agreeing to any family request, ask, does this require me to lie about who I am? Does this require me to accept disrespect? Does this require me to hide the truth? If the answer is yes, then what they're asking for isn't closeness, it's control. And you're allowed to say no, not with hatred, not with cruelty, just with clarity. Blood connects bodies. Loyalty connects character. One is given, the other is earned. I didn't lose a family when I set boundaries. I discovered who in my life was capable of real relationship. And that is worth far more than sharing a last name. Every morning at the center starts the same way. Coffee brewing, someone asking where the clean towels are, another resident complaining that the oatmeal tastes like regret, a volunteer showing up 5 minutes late and apologizing too much. No cameras, no ribbon cuttings, no speeches about changing the world, just people showing up to do real work. One afternoon, a city council representative stopped by for a routine inspection. She walked through the rooms, checked paperwork, asked a few questions, then said something that made me pause. "I didn't know this place existed," she said. "But it runs better than some programs with 10 times the budget." I smiled. "That's usually how it works." She laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. Brooke believed power came from being seen. I learned power comes from being relied on. She built a spotlight. I built a system. And when the spotlight burned out, the system remained. That difference is everything. Loud power announces itself. Quiet power operates. Loud power demands recognition. Quiet power earns trust. Loud power needs applause. Quiet power needs results. Our culture is addicted to visibility. Social media followers, stage presence, press releases, personal branding. It creates the illusion that the person talking the most must be the one in control. But in reality, when decisions matter, when money moves, when consequences appear, the person who speaks the least often holds the most authority. Brooke stood on stages and promised transformation. I sat in offices and approved budgets that actually transformed lives. Brooke chased donors. I worked with auditors. Brooke collected photos with politicians. I collected evidence. One kind of power collapses when attention disappears. The other kind grows when no one is looking. Here's something important I learned. If you're always trying to prove your power, you don't have it. People with real leverage don't need to announce it. They are placed in positions where their signature is required. Their approval is necessary. Their absence is noticed. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens by building competence quietly over time, showing up, delivering, solving problems, keeping promises, not needing credit every time. That kind of reputation spreads differently, not through gossip, through reliance. Someone asks, "Who can handle this?" And a name appears. Not because it's loud, because it's dependable. Many people think they lack power because they're not center stage. But the question is not who is watching me. The real question is, who needs me? Brooke needed constant attention. Donors, media, family praise, admiration. The moment attention shifted, she lost balance. I never needed an audience. So when the moment came, I didn't have to perform. I just did my job. Here's a practical truth for anyone listening. If you want quiet power, build these habits. First, become the person who handles unglamorous problems without complaint. Second, learn systems, budgets, procedures, rules, how things actually work behind the scenes. Third, keep your word even when no one is tracking it. Fourth, don't chase visibility before capability. Visibility without capability is fragile. Capability without visibility is inevitable. Eventually, someone will need what you've built. Another lesson, don't underestimate boring. Brooke avoided anything boring. Paperwork, compliance, audits, regulations. She thought boring work was beneath her. That boring work is where power hides. Contracts, licenses, verification, approval chains, financial controls. The people who master those areas decide who gets funded, who gets approved, who gets trusted. They don't trend online, but they decide which projects exist. If you're willing to learn what others avoid, you'll hold influence they never see coming. Now let's talk about something personal. When Brooke laughed at my job, she thought I was cleaning up other people's failures. She didn't understand that I was learning how institutions breathe. She thought I was small. She didn't realize I was studying the architecture of power from the inside. That's another thing quiet power teaches you. You don't need to announce your growth. Let others underestimate you. Let them talk. Let them perform. Meanwhile, you prepare. And when the moment arrives, you're already in the chair that matters. Not because you took it from someone, because you earned it when no one was paying attention. If there's one takeaway from my story, it's this. Don't confuse noise with strength. Don't confuse popularity with stability. Don't confuse visibility with value. Real power doesn't scream. It doesn't brag. It doesn't need to humiliate others to feel tall. It shows up every day. It listens, it learns, it delivers. And when chaos arrives, it stays standing. So I'll leave you with this question. In your own life right now, Are you chasing the spotlight so people notice you? Or are you quietly building something so solid that one day the spotlight will have no choice but to find you? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about strength that doesn't need to shout.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction created by artificial intelligence to heighten drama and emotion. But the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.